What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over which sprites I think are best in Season 4. As always, if you guys do find this video to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more. Comment down below which sprite you think is best this season, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it is EvolvedJake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So far this season, I don't think there's just a clear, definitive, standout sprite. But I do think there's a few that are actually really helpful. So we're going to be talking about the Sonic, Tails, Shadow, and Jackrabbit sprite. I think Jackrabbit is probably going to be the one that most people rate the highest. But starting off with the Sonic sprite, I think this is actually really good in fights. It makes your sprinting faster, which might not sound like it's that great for fighting. Like on paper, you would look at this and be like, okay, that's a traveling sprite. You get around the map quicker, cool. But it can actually be really helpful in fights because often in fights, especially around cover, you kind of end up in situations where you try to sprint jump around the piece of cover to try to break the enemy's camera, or just sprint jump around in general. Anytime you're sprinting in a fight, the fact that you're sprinting faster will make the Sonic sprite beneficial, because if you're going faster, it's, going to be a bit harder for enemies to track you most likely. And then you're also going to get to where you're trying to go faster, which could, make the difference. When you sprint jump around with this, it doesn't actually change your jump like the air sprite did. It's not like you're jumping higher, but since you're moving faster, you have more momentum. So when you kind of sprint jump around in fights, you are moving faster, I feel like, or doing more with the jump than you would be otherwise. But the base jump isn't actually changed. It's just because you have more momentum. And in general, getting around faster is nice. If you're trying to sprint to a piece of cover and you get there slightly faster, that might mean you take no damage or you take slightly less damage. And that could be something that actually has a domino effect on the fight and helps you win it. And then, just for traveling around the map, it's also nice. You could take out your pickaxe, have unlimited sprint, and then get around really quickly. You're good to go. So I think the Sonic sprite is actually really good in fights. The fact that you sprint jump, or the fact that you sprint around really fast can make your movement more of a hassle for the enemy to deal with. And if you are someone that plays off movement a lot, the Sonic sprite can help and make a pretty big difference. The Tails sprite, I think, is also one that people are going to rate highly, but I do think the value in this is kind of going to go down over time. This allows you to hover around in air. This is actually pretty good for traveling because you can get around the map slightly quicker or get up mountains or get to where you need to be slightly faster. And sometimes this can throw enemies off because the surprise factor is a really big thing with the Tails sprite. I think the fact that the season is new and that a lot of people aren't used to dealing with it yet makes it more likely that you can kind of catch people off guard and beam them because you're on the tail sprite. It kind of reminds me of balloons. We've had balloons in Fortnite several times, and you use the balloons, you go up, and maybe you catch somebody off guard because they weren't ready for you to be there. But I think as time goes on and as people get more used to dealing with this, the surprise factor isn't going to be there as much. And so I think the value in this is going to go down, but it can still be pretty good in fights. Unfortunately, there's not much initial momentum. When you hover by jumping and then holding your jump button and you'll start to rise. If there was good initial momentum, you could use this to really throw enemies off. But the initial momentum is actually quite slow. So you're not really going to use it like that. But I found it to be really helpful in fights when I was shockwaving at an opponent. Because if you shockwave, you're already somewhat high up and you have momentum. So if you shockwave and then start to hover towards the end of your shockwave, or once you get to them, you can actually rise pretty quickly and make that fight something different than what the enemy was anticipating. When you shockwave at them, they're thinking you're going right at them. And when you just kind of hover around in air and spray them with your spray weapon, it can really confuse a lot of people. And the shotguns this season don't have very much range, at least the pump and the 8-bit shotgun. The Oni has a lot of range. But those two shotguns don't have much range, so just hovering around in air can often just put you slightly out of their shotgun doing good damage. And if they don't swap weapons, which a lot of people aren't going to do if you're jumping on them, they think this is a shotgun fight, you could just hover around and spray them. So the fact that this does kind of help create distance, I feel like makes some of the shotguns this season not that good. There's also kind of the Mega Man blaster playstyle where you just go high in the air and shoot down the Mega Man blaster, and since it's an AoE weapon, you do a lot of damage. But I think a lot of the value in the tail sprite is the surprise factor, and once people are used to dealing with it, I think you're going to get beamed out of the air a lot, especially in higher skill lobbies. This may end up being something that really depends on your lobbies. In lower skill lobbies, it might thrive more. Also, in just really chaotic moments, if you're playing squads and it's 4v4v4 and there's just so much going on, somebody kind of hovering around with tail sprite might get more done than they would if it was kind of just not really a chaotic situation. I think the Shadow sprite is incredibly good, and for a lot of people, it's going to be their favorite. the Shadow Sprite automatically reloads weapons while they're not equipped. And this might not sound that incredible, but it can be a pretty big deal because the Oni shotgun you can get from the loot hacks is probably the best shotgun in the game right now, but it only has 2 shots. So in a lot of situations with the Sprite, you could shoot your 2 Oni shots, swap to your spray weapon for the fight. Like, let's say you shoot 2 of your Oni shots, you don't quite kill the opponent, you swap to your spray, you eliminate them, maybe, but now their teammate is on you. And in a normal situation, your shotgun wouldn't be loaded. But since you weren't on it for a bit, you could swap back to your Oni, and it probably will have 1 shot, and maybe will have 2 shots if enough time has passed. And that can be a huge difference maker. In team game modes especially, I think having the shotgun reload itself over time is going to be huge. In solos even, it makes the Oni shotgun a little more forgiving than it would be otherwise. And in situations where you're getting third-partied, again, I think it could be incredible. Because in a normal fight, like let's say you shoot your 2 Oni shots, you eliminate the opponent, but now you have to reload and someone's shockwaving onto you, so you need to shockwave away and try to reset. The fact that your Oni could be reloading itself while you're using your movement and while you're trying to reset the fight makes third-party situations a lot easier to deal with if you are going to use the Oni shotgun. So I think in team game modes, if you use the Oni, you're definitely going to want the Shadow Sprite, but even in solos, it can be incredibly good. And since the Oni shotgun is seeming like it's going to be the best shotgun this season, the Shadow Sprite pairs perfectly with it and, you know, makes it a better weapon because it helps correct one of the weaknesses of the Oni. I believe when you get the Shadow Sprite to level 5, it's supposed to reload weapons even when you have them out. So like maybe you could shoot your 2 Oni shots, and then by the time that's done, you have a 3rd. I believe they disabled that because of some bug. I don't know if it was like disabled in a way that it's not coming back or if it'll be fixed at some point, but I think at the moment, the level 5 Shadow Sprite doesn't reload weapons that you already have equipped. But this is very, very good. The Jackrabbit Sprite, like I said, is probably going to be the best one for a lot of people this season, or the one that most people rate highly. This gives you an extra jump, so you can jump and then double jump, kind of reminiscent of the medallion that did that in Chapter 6, Season 4. And this is obviously going to be incredible in fights because the double jump can really throw an enemy off and break their camera. You could be fighting them, jump, now you double jumped and you're completely at a different angle, or you're behind them, and that makes the fight messy, and that makes the fight, you know, difficult for them to deal with. The problem with this, though, is there is some things I dislike about it. And the problem is it seems like you can't aim in when you jump until after you land from the double jump. And that just makes fight weird because a lot of times the way I want to use this is I shoot my shotgun and then jump and then swap to my spray weapon. And the fact that I've created distance makes the spray weapon better. But also the fact that I can't aim with my spray weapon makes that fight kind of awkward. And then also when you double jump, there's an animation and you can't really shoot right away. So it's a bit clunky to use. I still think this is going to be one of the best in the, you know, loot pool. And it's going to be something that's very difficult to fight. But those 2 drawbacks make it just like clunky and awkward to use sometimes. And I think it's something that, like, as I get more time using it, I probably will, you know, enjoy it more and become more accustomed to it. But the fact that the season is so new, that clunkiness really just like doesn't feel good when it happens. Also, in chaotic situations, when you're trying to like get behind cover or do something to reset a fight, the double jump can also be really helpful there. You know, you have those moments where you're trying to get to a piece of cover and it's just like you're barely not there. That double jump can help shore up those situations and maybe result in you taking less damage and being able to turn the fight. So at the end of the day, the choice is up to you. I think the Jackrabbit Sprite will probably end up being my favorite as I get more used to it and am not like as thrown off by those weaknesses. But the Shadow is also incredible if you like using the Oni. And so I think it's going to be between those 2, but the Oni shotgun is so good that probably just going to main the Shadow Sprite because it, you know, clears up one of their weaknesses. If you like the Tails and Sonic, they're also, you know, pretty good in fights, but I think as the season goes on, the value of the Tails Sprite will kind of fall off. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more. Let me know in the comments down below which Sprite is your favorite, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.